This is the Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us. Welcome to the Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host Brian Gill. We are so excited today to have Joshua and Caleb Simmons, dads and brothers from the Dads on the Fly podcast. Both of them are dads. They are brothers that have the last name. They love fly fishing. These guys are passionate about fly fishing. They tackle parenting and family in the same way they tackle fly fishing, figuring out as they go, or as they like to say, on the fly. The Dads on the Fly podcast broaches a wide variety of topics and guests talking about faith, family, and fly fishing and the intermingling of it all. We've enjoyed getting to know these guys so much, and we're honored that they would take some time to join us for a conversation. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Brad. Man, that was I'm humbled. Thank you. That was awesome. Welcome. We haven't had one of those yet.
No,
that
was actually impressive. I was going to see what his hourly rate is to maybe do that for some of our shows. That was pretty impressive.
Oh, well, we can talk later. I'll send you my rates for voiceover work.
I just carry around a any kind of thing that Brad says and just let people listen to it. He does the talking for all of us.
Great idea, man.
I have an inside goal of just being a voiceover. That way I can stay at home talking to a microphone and make a living in my pajamas. So.
Yeah, I more podcasting we do. I'm starting to try to get. Told my wife the other day, maybe we could do a couple of different shows, and I could just sit down here in my basement, and life would be good. Just fish and talk. Yeah,
there you go.
Hey, there's what could be better?
Nothing,
man. So tell us about your the catalyst for what started the podcast. Tell us how it started and why and all of the things. We want to hear more about Dads on the Fly. A lot of our listeners, just to kind of preface this, a lot of our listeners follow you guys. There's a lot of cross-pollination there already. And so this is going to be kind of a collaboration of some sorts in a lot of their eyes. But there are some people who may not have found you guys yet. So tell us a little bit about the beginnings and where you are now.
So in 2000, I don't know, I can't say 2000, whatever, about 10 years ago it was, we started fly fishing. And you can find those stories on, I don't know, multiple episodes, Caleb. We seem to have told that story many times. But we started fly fishing, and we'd been fly fishing for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And we did a trip with my dad in 2017. I came home and made a video about it. And I'm not a video guy, let's just say that. I mean, it kind of told his story, which is cool because my dad's a cancer survivor and still living with cancer to this day. And it tells a cool story, but it definitely wasn't going to a Fly Fishing Film Festival awards or anything like that for sure. And it was so much work, and we kind of went through a spell, man, where we didn't fish that much. Does that make sense? Don't you think? There was like this spell where we weren't fishing.
Yeah, not as much as we wanted to.
And not like being really together. I mean, Caleb lives, if you're a really good driver of the golf ball, you could probably hit a 3-wood to Caleb's house from my house. And
so you mean it's like really like far to the right?
Yeah, if you stand that way, yeah.
You can hit a driver from my house to your house easy
because it's downhill.
I'm way up.
Yeah. Way up. There's a pretty big slope there.
It's gonna have to be like a 90-degree turn if I'm hitting.
So, we just hadn't fished as much together. Hadn't really spent the kind of time we really kind of needed to as brothers.
Well, we both had really young kids.
We're busy, young kids.
Super kid. Lots of stuff going on with our kids. Lots of stuff happening. And we just didn't. We weren't real intentional with our time together. And then we went on vacation together and we were with our parents. All of our families were going on a trip together. And at that trip, we went fishing that day.
We always go one day.
Yeah, we always take a day and go fly fishing some little Blue Line Creek up there near Banner Elk. And when we got done, we were like,
we really didn't start till we got home.
Yeah, well, but we talked about it there a little bit. Yeah. We were like, you think we could ever do a podcast? You think we could ever tell some of the stories? Because one of the things we talked about, I think on that trip, and then really when we got back, and it all went through a midnight text message thread, because that's how we communicate most effectively probably is when I'm laying in the bed and my wife's saying, who is texting you this late at night?
Yeah.
And it's always my brother,
because I'm awake.
Stuff.
And then you sometimes call and my wife's like, is he calling again? And that's kind of been the reoccurring theme for the last year and a half now that we've been doing this. But to make a long story short, there was a text message thread and we said, what if we just started telling some stories about our fishing adventures? Because we would be in the car driving, or Caleb would be driving. I'm usually the passenger. And we would talk about things. We would talk about, how we're being dads or how we're going to fish today or how's work or anything like that. And we said, what if we started doing this? We're both fairly good, not necessarily behind the microphone. We kind of had to get better at that. But we both communicate for a living. Like Caleb's a pastor, I'm a school teacher. So we're talking all the time. we're always talking. And I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. And I don't know, July 21, we recorded an episode. And we really didn't have a clue what we're doing. We kind of still don't.
But I think the thing that's been kind of neat is the whole thing has really morphed over that time. We started in July of 21 and we were like, what is this thing? Is it just going to be us talking, telling our stories? We're going to run out of stuff to talk about eventually. And then it became this thing where we wanted to get other voices speaking in. We take three things really serious. We take a lot of stuff seriously, but three things we take really seriously are is our faith, the fact that we're parents. We try to be good dads and good husbands to our wives. And then we flip and love to fly fish. And so we, those are things we're really passionate about. It pretty much was what we talked about all the time. And, but we knew too, I'm still a young dad. We still are novices when it comes to fly fishing.
Did you just call me an old dad?
I didn't say
Is that what that was?
That's what I heard.
But we knew we had a lot to learn. And so we were able to finally, over time, and I think this is where the podcast has kind of morphed really in the last year, to start asking people that are way smarter than we are about these things. And so we try to come at it from the perspective of, we want to ask the questions that a lot of people like us are asking. We want to try to get in front of those people and then ask them these questions about fishing, about fatherhood, about their faith. And we just try to, encourage dads
and really staying true to who we are.
Yeah.
We're weekend warrior fishermen, sometimes one weekend a month. Sometimes we get the chance to fish more than that. And that's the other part of it. We can't fish every day, but every week we can talk to somebody about fishing. and that was part of it.
Which is sometimes also, just as nice.
It can be. And sometimes you learn more from these conversations than you would out on the water. And the other thing that has been really, and I'll say big props to you guys, because I went back and binged all of your show, and you've always stood really good with kind of what your mission is behind the Storied Outdoors. We kind of started Dads on the Fly. I mean, luckily we called it that.
Yeah.
Because we could have called it anything.
Yeah.
But when we started Dads on the Fly, we did some episodes, a lot of them just me and Caleb. We started doing some interviews, and we weren't as intentional with maybe who we were interviewing. And as time went by, we've been a lot more direct about, hey, when you come on our show, yes, we're going to talk about fly fishing, but somewhere in there, we want to talk about how you've been a father through your journey. We've got people we've had on the show that are older gentlemen that have had kids now in college, or we have people on the show who have 2 months old or 2-month-olds. and we've been much more intentional. I think that's helped.
Yeah.
Really helped what we're trying to do.
So as you guys talk a lot about fatherhood, obviously you just said that, but it's like, that seems to be really important to you. How has your father kind of shaped who you are as dads?
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll take first. We've been really blessed, man. Our dad, Southern Baptist pastor our entire life, but he was super in every part of our life. Started sports up, never missed a sporting event or a singing event or some type of after school activity. Super intentional about spending time with us. I can remember Dad checking me out of school to go fishing. I can remember doing things like that with him. And I just think,
on your birthday, you always got checked out of school.
Yeah,
or you didn't have to go.
School, or you didn't have to go because you had a fishing trip or you had something going on that day.
I like that.
Our dad was just intentional with us. And I think the thing that I see that's been beneficial of that now is we still love hanging out with him to this day.
That's good.
And I want to be able, I want that for my kids. I want my kids to enjoy their lives now, but I think I also want a parent in mind with the fact of I'd still like to have a relationship with them when they don't have to anymore either. I mean, now they're kind of stuck with me, but
that's a good test of the relationship. Is like do your kids still want to hang out with you when they're older?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great measure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And crazy enough, I don't know, maybe I wasn't cool enough to hang out with other people, but I always wanted to hang out with my dad when I was older. And I mean, I can remember being in college and I was an RA in a dorm. Hagen Hall, for any University of Kentucky people out there, that now doesn't stand anymore. It's since been torn down. But I was an RA my sophomore year there, and my dad took a week off of work, came up, stayed with me in my dorm room, and like cooked dinner for the guys on my hall one night. And
nice.
like I would go to class and dad would just sit and read books or hang out, and then we would like see Lexington together in the afternoons and got to take him to a Wildcat. I mean, just some things like that. And obviously I had other friends there and other people, but I was always still wanting to hang out with him at that age. And we're blessed now to have our mom and dad moved up to where we live about a year ago now, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And we love that. We probably love it as much for the fact that mom gets to keep the kids for us to go fishing now, but
game changer.
But that was a game changer. But we love just being able to go over there. I don't know. We started, I don't know, 6 months ago when the podcast was really picking up, and we were really realizing we had to be intentional with things like, hey, we got to actually have conversations. We can't just do everything via text message.
I told Joshua he's actually got to sit down and have a meeting with me,
which I don't do very well.
Stuff out, which he's
so
all over the place.
So we eat breakfast
meeting, man. You guys got to have staff meetings.
We eat breakfast at my dad's house every Thursday morning.
Oh, and, how cool is that?
And that's a cool thing. It's really been cool. We try to make it. We're very intentional with that, and we show up and eat breakfast, and sometimes we talk about the podcast, and sometimes we just hang out. But
I need to ship you some Conecuh sausage to have on that next breakfast.
Oh, we'll be glad to. We would love that.
Sounds wonderful.
Dad does
all what it is, but let's do it.
It's an Alabama thing, and so it's like as soon as you taste it, it's like a game over.
I like it.
I literally grilled 5 pounds of it just like 2 nights ago because it was in my freezer and I thawed it out. And
because I was like, why not?
I know, why not? Yeah. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to introduce you guys to that. It's a special thing. Yeah, we'll make that happen.
Get it our way.
I'm excited.
Great.
That's good. You guys said earlier that, did I hear it right, that you started fly fishing when? It wasn't awful long ago.
It was about
10 years now.
Okay.
The only reason I remember it is because the first time you and I ever went fly fishing together, we went up on the West Fork and we dropped Foster. That's when Sally was working at the elementary school.
Bethel, yeah. So
and Foster was, my wife was out gone.
About 9 years.
Oh, he wasn't walking yet, man. So it had to be like 10 because he's 11 now.
We got married 10 years ago. So
that's true. Yeah. So it was like right after. So we like to say around 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I mean, what started you? I mean, you fished as a kid, but now shifting gears to fly fishing is a little bit different.
We grew up bass fishing, lake fishing all the time.
Right.
We grew up in South Carolina. We didn't grow up in the mountains. We grew up down near the coast of South Carolina. So we're doing a lot of lake fishing, a lot of saltwater fishing.
Fishing with our grandfather on Lake Gunnersville.
Yeah, fishing Lake Gunnersville down there.
The big G.
Nice.
Yeah, we've done that quite a bit.
Many times.
Nice.
And now I'm dying to get out there with a fly rod.
Yep.
But anyway,
hey, come on and we'll make that happen.
Yeah, that sounds great. I hear it's phenomenal. Our friend Wade Blevins.
Yeah, you guys know all about.
Tell
us all about Lake Gunnersville.
Man, Wade, gosh, we could have a whole podcast just talking about how cool Wade is.
What a treasure trove.
That guy's awesome. But anyway, so we conventional fished our whole lives. We were both real into sports through high school and then even in college.
Caleb, let's change that. Caleb was into sports in college.
So
I was into watching. Clemson, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
I was into watching.
So when we moved, so Joshua married Laura, his wife, who's from here, and moved up here. When I graduated school, I came up here because I had a job in South Carolina that fell through, and I was like, Joshua was like, dude, come teach up here for at least a year. Had no plans to live up here at all. And but came up here, I taught school for a couple of years, and then after I taught school for a couple of years, got involved at the church that I'm actually at now, just kind of going, volunteering, being involved. And then they brought me on staff. And I want to say a couple of weeks after I started at the church, I had a guy approach me and was like, hey, man, I want to take you fly fishing. It's like, I mean, I live up here now. Yeah, let me get more invested in this culture. It sounds great.
That's right.
And so he takes me over to the Tuckasegee, and we had trout fished some that summer before.
I'll tell that story. You go on with your story.
We had done some spinner fishing for trout over in Cherokee.
Boo.
That's the way we feel now, but it wasn't it. But I had a guy take me, and we went over to the Tuckasegee River, which is about 45 minutes from here. And I caught like 5 or 6 trout stripping streamers back
as his eyelets were freezing.
No, it wasn't that cold.
Oh, I thought it was that cold.
That was a different day.
Okay.
That was my first river to fly fish on too.
The Tuck, yeah.
Yep.
And caught 5 or 6 that morning, and literally went to the fly shop that afternoon. And this is pre-kids. So I called my wife, was like, hey, I'm about to drop some money. That's okay.
Take all my money.
And so literally like bought an entire outfit that afternoon and said, this is what I'm going to do. Like and my wife it was kind of at that season. I'd been in ministry for a little while, and my wife was like, you need a hobby. Like I said, didn't have kids yet. And
AKA you need to get out of the house.
Yeah, that. And just I think she knew it would be good for my mental health. And
so, amen to that for sure.
So she, and especially like moving into ministry and not having a clue what I was doing. So it became that thing. And I went that day and got outfitted, and that guy approached my wife that Sunday morning and was like, I'm sorry. And she was like, wow, I'm so excited for him. And he was like, no, I'm sorry. And now she understands why.
So for me, it was similar, but we went on that trip he was talking about. We camped over in Cherokee, and we just like slayed fish for 2 days, literally just a cooler full we brought home.
Worms and corn.
Worm dunkers. And yeah, we were those guys. And
nothing wrong with that.
We stepped out. No, we still have a lot of friends that do that, and it's cool.
Oh, gone bait fishermen.
Yeah, that's us. And we stepped out of a stream at, I don't know, around noon, and we had caught a good bit of fish in that stream. And this man and woman, I'll never forget it. They'd been fly fishing up above us a little bit, and they came out about the same time we did. And I was like, somebody said, like, she's like, how'd y'all do? And I was like, well, we had a pretty good morning. And she's like, well, I think we caught 2. And I think we caught well over 15 fish. Yeah, 15 or 20 fish. And I was like, man, Caleb, I can remember saying this. I'll never forget till the day I die. I looked at Caleb and my good buddy who took us that weekend. I was like, I'll never do that. I was like, that is too much work. They don't know what they're doing. Like, we were just slaying fish. Like, why would I ever do that? And right now we're sitting in a 10-foot room, and I don't think I know I couldn't throw a bait caster that far. And I guarantee you I couldn't throw a spinning rod across this room, and it's 10 foot wide. Since I picked up a fly rod and put it in my hand, and I have nothing against it. If you want a conventional fish, go for it. It's great. I have a lot of friends that do it, but everything I do now fishing, I want to figure out how to do on the fly. I don't care if it's catfish. I don't care if it's whatever. If we're going somewhere, I'm going to find a fly rod either big enough or small enough, and I'm going to try to figure out how to catch it on a fly rod. And it may be more difficult, and that's fine, but that's where I'm at, man. And I'm just all in.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, that's so funny. You know, we've talked about this before a lot on this podcast, and, you know, Brad will be fishing down, you know, at Bolton Branch, and I'll be fishing on Lake Gunnersville, and they're like, man, I didn't know there were trout in there. And like, it's like, well, I mean, you can catch more than just, you can catch more than just trout. I mean,
that's right.
You've been learning that lately.
Yeah. So, you guys, man, this podcast you guys have is y'all are continually, I mean, I love following you all. Y'all's Instagram is just blowing up, and y'all have some phenomenal guests. Who have been some of your favorite guests so far? And I know that everybody that you invite is an awesome guest, but like, who are some of the ones that stand out?
Well, we have to say, we said if we were going to do guests, we could not do Dads on the Fly without interviewing our own father. And that was our first interview. Did it on
it's like episode 3 or 4.
Yeah, like Caleb's Dining Room Table.
Yeah,
we had Dad on, and
go back and listen, but don't judge it.
Don't judge the audio on that one for sure. We were figuring out, but we said, hey, we got to start there, and so we had Dad on and kind of just had him tell his story about being a father to us, and it was kind of cool. And I should probably go back. It's been so long ago. Yeah, but then it got to be this thing. We did a kind of local series with some folks we knew.
And this is back when, like, if anybody would talk to us, we'd let them, like, be like, you like to fly fish? Come be on a podcast.
That's what I said earlier. We've been much more intentional lately with who we invite and who we ask. And and who kind of reaches out to us. But early on, when we're trying to build a show, we're like, we'll talk to anybody. And through that, we met a lot of awesome people that we'll have on again once we start repeating guests, because they're really great anglers and fly shop owners and people like that. But one of the best first episodes in our first maybe early career was a man by the name of Ray Sugg. And Ray Sugg is a local gentleman who lives right here in West North Carolina. He's a school teacher. And Mr. Ray Sugg has, help me if I'm wrong here, Caleb, has caught a trout.
Caught two trout.
Caught two trout, because that's the way he keeps it.
Yep.
And over 1,000 streams in North Carolina on a fly that he tied. And
that's a local legend there. I mean,
yes, he is a local legend. North Carolina Wildlife did a big story on him. Yeah, he's a local legend. And so we did a 2-part episode with him.
Yeah, the man of 1,000 streams.
Man of 1,000 streams. And that was really awesome. And just, we sat around a table that night. He just told stories, and some off air that are even better than what are on air. Just great stories. And that's when we started. Man, I was like, man, okay, this is fun. Let's find more people like this that could tell really good stories. Like, our stories are okay every now and then, but we can't do this. And so I don't know, man. Then it went from there, and the running joke always is that I will ask anyone to be on the show. Like, if I think they're a good fit, I have no fear to ask anyone to be on the show.
Yeah, man. I've adopted all they can say is no.
There you go.
I mean,
so Caleb gives me this book, vacation. Yeah. Vacation one year. Yeah. He's like, read this book when you get home. I read it in like 3 days. It's a book called The Optimist, The Case for a Fly Fishing Life by Mr. David Coggins.
Yeah.
And I started following him on Instagram from Dads on the Fly. And that's the other thing. I don't know about you guys, but I really hide behind Dads on the Fly. Like, it's kind of got a cool ring to it. Like, if I'm just Instagram messaging people from my little tag, like, who's going to respond? But, maybe that helps. I don't know. But I sent a DM.
It's legit, man. I mean, it brings a little bit of oomph to it.
Yeah. So I sent a DM to Mr. David Coggins, and I was like, hey, man, would you ever consider being on our podcast? He was like, sounds great. Tell me when. And we did a Zoom call with him that night. And
when we were done, I was like, I can't believe that.
Caleb looked at me. He's like, did we just do that?
I was like, we just interviewed like the guy off the Dos Equis commercial. Like,
he's like the most interesting man in the world, but he fly fishes.
Just travels all over the place, does all this stuff. I mean, he's New York Times bestselling author for like writing on like men's style all and stuff like that. And he lives in New York City, and literally just one of the coolest guys I've ever met, and extremely humble and extremely just willing to do whatever we want. Like, he was like, what questions you want to ask? Like, how can I help you guys grow? What can I do for you?
And he did.
And he did a lot.
Helped us a lot.
That episode really kind of helped, I think, get us in front of a lot of people. It really boosted our growth. And
cool.
And so then we've interviewed a lot of people since then, though.
I mean, great. Obviously Tom Rosenbauer was awesome. He was on you guys' show as well.
One of the coolest guys ever.
Just a humble guy. And then we got to meet him in Virginia. So that was really cool. But sometimes the episodes that you don't, I mean, our recent guest that we had on about, I guess, back in the middle of January, Mr. Dylan Tomini was great. He just had such a cool story about his kids and being a dad through his book that really just, I don't know, man, it touched me when he read that. That was just such a cool moment for him to read that story. But then every now and then you get a guest that you're not expecting. That, like, we haven't even dropped yet. It kind of just blew us away the other night, and it's coming out. So I would love to say there's a favorite, but really sometimes it's like the next one. It's like
yeah, I can totally
we're about to have these guys on from the Storied Outdoors, and it's going to be immaculate. And I can't wait for that one. So,
well, I'm glad that we haven't been on there yet, because I was just thinking, all the other ones are just going to pale in comparison.
Oh, right. Absolutely. we're waiting on this one to just boost our listership by tons. I mean,
you're going to get dozens of listeners.
Dozens of more follows. Sounds great.
That's right.
I kind of answered that whole question. You got anybody else that you're thinking of?
Like you said, we've had so many great ones. I mean, we talked about Wade a minute ago. Wade was a blast. That whole story is just a cool story. Stinking cool.
Man.
His whole thing behind the Sam's One bug is just phenomenal. We've had a lot of great ones. I feel bad sitting here trying to think of all of them.
Well, you don't really want to hear them.
So the best guests we've ever had, we better say this, our wives, just guests, and so they are the best guests we've yet to have.
Just released part 2.
We did a second one with wives, and we finally are on YouTube now, And we figured what better way to kick off than with the most beautiful part of our lives.
Put them on TV, right?
YouTube.
Well played,
So,
gentlemen.
that's how we did
played.
that.
Roses among thorns.
Absolutely.
There you
go. What I know, we have a running list of our wish list. What's the sort of white whale for you guys?
Oh man. I don't know.
Man. I'm waiting on Joshua to send what's the guy from Yellowstone?
Yeah, Kevin Costner supposedly fly fishes. So
apparently Kevin Costner
he does. No, he does. Yeah.
So yeah, I keep waiting on Kevin Costner to get on the show.
A lot of publicists probably go through there and agents and whatever, but
I bet he'd do it.
I don't know. It's one of those things where, like I said,
all you can do is ask.
So if a company reaches out to us, or we reach out to a company now, say they're in the fly fish industry, I'm a lot more intentional. I won't not have dads on. Does that make sense? For example, this year we've got a couple of moms lined up for the show, and some other folks. But it does help if they have stories about their father taking them fishing, or they themselves can say, this is what we've learned as being a parent.
Yeah, we say our podcast about three things: fly fishing, fatherhood, and faith. If you hit at least two of those, we'll pretty much consider bringing you on the show.
If you hit three, it's a home run.
If you hit three, it's a home run. Yeah.
Like people like Wade, you guys. I mean, those are home run episodes for us. And because it's not always about, just to be honest, when we started, it was like, oh man, Caleb, who can we get? They've got a big Instagram following. Let's see if we can get them. It'll help us out. But I kind of felt like I did that more. Now it's more like, hey, who can we get that's really going to be about what we're about? Yeah. In fact, a lot of times I'll say to people, not that we have a lot of people trying to be on the show. Trust me, I'm usually still trying to get them on the show. But I'll say, hey, have you listened to an episode, or have you kind of paid attention to what we're about? Because I want you to understand, coming into this, like, we have something we're trying to do here. It started out as a podcast, and I think Brad said this earlier. It's now, let's build this community together. Let's try to build a community of anglers and that are going to do cool things. And, if you ever get to be in person with them, like when we were in Virginia, it just makes it that much more special.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've actually seen that, sometimes the more famous the guest, that doesn't always equal, podcast downloads and listens.
It's because they're on so many shows, like they can tune in anybody's show, right?
Yeah.
Like they're on 14 different podcasts, and you search, this certain person, for sure. We've kind of seen that too. Certain episodes really surprise you. I've heard you guys say that on your show, like your recap episodes, like, wow, we can't believe that one did so good, because you just never know.
You never know.
Going to be into.
Yeah.
There's ones
it's more about the engaged followers than it is total number of followers.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been episodes we've done with just the two of us, and I'm like, dude, nobody's going to want to listen to this. And then it ends up being like,
yeah, the same.
Holy cow. Okay.
Yeah. Huh. You guys, it seems like, following you for the last, year or so, it seems like you guys are constantly evolving. And I listened to your episode, I guess it was around Christmas, of kind of the year wrap up, of some things that you kind of wanted to do and hope to accomplish. What are some goals that you guys have, and what do you want this podcast to be thought of as in this people? Brad says all the time, there's a ton of podcasts you can be listening to. Like, what are you hoping that people take away from this, and what do you want to accomplish from your podcast?
I know for me personally, it started as, let's tell fishing stories, and also kind of maybe how we parent in doing that, with a faith-based aspect to it. But over time, we really become, we get more and more, it has began to be a thing where a lot of young fathers have reached out, and we don't claim to be experts in fatherhood. I don't think anybody that claims to be experts is going to be in trouble, because something's going to happen the next day, and then you're having kids is crazy, and you never know what they're going to do. But that part's been really cool to me. And so as we kind of approach the second year, it was one of those things where, hey, Caleb, let's make sure that we always have that in our episodes, and let's be inspiring to those guys. And in some ways, we've been able to do both. We've been able to be inspiring to maybe new dads or dads. I mean, I got a message the other day from a lady who they're expecting their first child. I don't even remember where they're from. And she just sent me a picture on our Instagram. You might saw it. It was them listening to our first episode in their car, like on a date night. And if a message like that a month, that does it for me. I don't care if we get 4 listens or 4,000.
Yeah.
It just means that we're able to positively impact people's lives. And that has been really special.
Yeah. I mean, the whole purpose behind the pod, and like I said, this developed over time. This wasn't how we started. Like, we didn't originally go in with this goal, but this is really what's kind of come from it, and where we've really tried to focus our attention. We just we're trying to create this community, just like what you guys are saying. And what we're trying to do through it is just encourage dads and encourage anglers. And so, because, you know, dads have so much going on, the culture that we live in between work, kids, if you try to have a hobby, a lot of times what we're doing gets in the way of actually being intentional with our kids. And so we try to use fly fishing as a means to intentionally connect dads and their kids. We don't get it right all the time, but
I also see it sometimes as they're both very difficult.
Yeah.
Like being a father and being a fly angler are both hard. And so
you get tangled up in both of them.
You better believe it. And that's the way I've kind of looked at it a lot of times. Is just it's difficult, but just being real, those messages that I get randomly,
that's why we do it.
It wasn't why we started it, I don't think, because we never knew that was going to happen. But it's definitely why I do it now. And with the trips we're doing this year.
Yeah, tell us about those. I want to
so we've got a retreat in April that's full. We're bringing 7 fathers, and for this one, sons are coming in right here to West North Carolina. And
8 to 14.
And I think it's from 8-year-old, about from 8-year-old to I think 13 or 14 is the oldest one. And they're going to spend a couple nights with us right here where we learned how to trout fish. Or around her to fly fish, not trout fish, but fly fish. And we're going to put them on some guided fishing that Saturday morning. And then they're going to have an opportunity to either go back with their sons and fly fish the stream that afternoon, or we happen to be on a lake and they're going to be able to paddle around a canoe, or there's some great hiking trails, or they're going to be able to be intentional with their kid for an entire pretty much 48 hours. And campfire time, which I know you guys love a campfire. And we're going to be around a campfire both nights, and just some real intentional time. We set it up as we wanted the dad. Caleb says this all the time.
Yeah, we want the dad to be the champion. Like we don't want us to be the champion that weekend. We want the dad to be the champion that weekend.
We're just going to set that up. And so that was the first one. And I don't remember when we had the idea. It's probably been 6 or 8 months ago now. I was like, let's try this. We put it out to our listeners first, and we filled it up all but one spot. And me being me, I was like, man, we got to fill this last spot. I was getting antsy. And so I posted on our social media, and that night we could have filled another one. Yeah. And we didn't, because we want to make sure we know how to do this one right first. But we could have filled another one. So we're thinking about possibly doing another one in the fall. But we also have an adult trip in the fall that's a little smaller that we're going to do with our friend Tyler in Morehead City. And that's going to be we've got a father and an older child, and also another father, just a father coming by himself, that his wife gave to him for his birthday present. And we're going to do some albie fishing on that one in the salt. And same thing, intercoastal waterway. We're going to have a couple campfires right there on the water. And it's just really about trying to invest in people's lives, if that makes sense, and do it face to face.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And so we like to think that's more of where we're going to go in the future, but we're not going to just we both love what we do every day. And so we're not just going to drop everything and make it just that. We're going to try to do it the right way.
Sure. Have you guys, there was a guest that we had on the show, John Hagedorn from Family Lines. Have you guys checked them out?
I've reached out to him after listening to him on your episode. Yeah. And we've been back and forth. You know how it is. Sometimes hey, my schedule's busy. I'll catch up with you when I'm not.
Sure.
But, it's definitely something we've looked at. And
have you watched any of their videos on their Family Lines videos?
I think Caleb has.
Yeah, I've seen them. We have he's right now me over there chairs. Yeah, man, they're awesome. They're great.
So good, man.
So things like that, we think we'll eventually, as Caleb said.
I mean, there's a chance for those. We'll see how this first one goes, and then probably another one around here. But then, I mean, you want to hear crazy big vision, long time from now, possibly.
Careful.
We could see something like that scaling to where we have these all over the place.
Sure.
trying to find other leaders to lead father-son weekends, and really try and
And father-daughter weekends too.
Father-daughter
I've got to
weekend,
got to plan one of those because my wife, my daughter's like, hey, when do I get, And we
When
had
do
some
I
people
get
reach out, hey, I've got a daughter, and this one just worked better, father and son. This one in April because of like the logistics of it, and the location. But it's definitely something that we're trying to do more of. And so what started as a podcast has, and I think we've talked about this. We always want to make sure we're doing the podcast because it's fun for us. We enjoy meeting people like you guys and so on, but we don't know where it might
end up
venture go to.
That's
we just
awesome.
kind of stay true to ourselves, like I said, not get too crazy.
The goal for those weekends too is, we're going to let dads come and hang out at these things, but we're going to try to give them some intentional things to talk about with their kids and give them opportunities to have some real conversations that maybe they don't have when they're at home in the midst of all the craziness.
And that all that sounds so amazing. I love it. I hope it works out for you. I hope that maybe I can get to take my son or daughter on one of those one day.
Be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, what you guys have been talking about really is legacy, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this legacy that you're leaving, and I love how that's been growing. You guys have been open to learning and changing and growing deeper in what you're doing. And that, man, that's such a, like you said, an encouragement to those who listen, and who knows, how far the ripples go. I always think about that, I believe one of the gifts that we will get as a believer, one of the gifts we'll get in heaven is we'll find out exactly what the Lord was up to, that we were oblivious to. We'll get there and somebody will walk up to us and, they're there because of some passing comment that we said that we thought nothing about, that the Lord used as, as a friend of mine calls a pebble in their shoe.
Yeah.
And later down the road, they had to think about that. And all of a sudden they're growing in their faith. And then, not only they're growing, but now their kids are growing in their faith. And that ripple just goes. And one of the glorious things of our heavenly time is we'll find out what God was up to when we had no clue what was really happening, but he used us, and he's going to go, see, look, you didn't even know, but I was using you. And so, like, for us, like, how far are the ripples going to go because of the consistency of continuing to have these conversations over Zoom and these podcasts, and somebody's going to listen, and we're not going to have a clue, but one day we will.
Yeah.
One day we will, and it'll be, a great reward, more than anything that we can imagine, that someone's eternity was impacted by a conversation that we had about something we thought was menial, but the Lord turned into something big. So I love that legacy, and I love what you guys are doing, man. So keep up that good work, fellas.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean,
appreciate it.
That's what it's all about.
We often refer to this conversation as a sort of a digital campfire, because we can't be around the campfire.
Story time, fellas.
Story time.
We'll have to fix that though soon.
Yeah, y'all can come.
Like
y'all aren't that far away from a campfire.
Get up
That
here.
sounds
Or we can
good.
just meet at Lake Gunnersville.
Yeah, it sounds great.
There we go. There we go. So imagine if you are sitting around a campfire, what's your sort of go-to story, punchy story that you have in the barrels that you want to tell? That's a good
I've thought about this since they asked, and so I was gonna kind of ask you your opinion.
Oh, okay.
Should I tell the car story on side 276?
Yeah.
Or should we go with, like, Foster's first wild trout? Those are both like the ones that first came to mind. But do you were supposed to come up with something too?
Oh, I've got different ones.
You got a couple?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, I guess this story is good because I'm still fly fishing even after this happened, maybe. So my kids were little, and my parents were still living in South Carolina at the time, and I met them in between where we live now and Greenville, South Carolina. It was raining, and that afternoon I was like, I'm going to drop them off, and I don't think the time had changed yet, so it didn't get dark till about 8 o'clock or so. And my wife and her mother are very close, and they were out in Asheville for the night, hanging out, shopping, going to dinner, and things like that. And I was like, I'll swing back up the mountain and I'll fish for, till dark. And it'll be cool. And then I was going home. So I started up a very popular area, no cell phone service, but a very popular area, well-traveled road that I'd fished many times before. And I parked on the side of the road, got in a stream, caught a couple wild fish. Don't even really remember the fish. That was not the memorable part. And I was like, it was starting to rain a little harder, but it was also one of those things where I knew I had probably another 45 minutes of daylight. And believe it or not, I was not driving fast, But where I had parked, there was kind of this whole crater in front of me, but not behind me. And me being me, I didn't back up. I just went and I kind of felt a bump. And I was like, I got a 4-wheel drive car, just bump through it. Well, anyway, it was more of a crater than I realized. And my car kind of just did this number, but not like a fast like roll. It was just like, and so I turned my car completely upside down on the side.
And like creek side, basically, like right there.
Yeah, like in kind of from the creek bank, and no cell phone service. First thing I do, I climbed out of the car and made sure 2 things. I made sure that at that point I was not fishing with my wedding ring because it would fall off in the water. So I found it, and then I found my rod. Those are the first 2 things I found. And then I realized I was like, I'm not going to be able to roll this car over by myself. It was in a spot I couldn't do it in. And so anyway, long story short, spent the night with 2 guys in a tow truck when they came to get me. I rode in between 2 dudes in the front of a tow truck.
Were they larger fellows?
Yes, they were larger fellows. So I'm squaring the tie. But the other thing was
they
I had
little Simmons sandwich.
Yeah, a little Simmons sandwich. But I had this bin of all my fly gear that I wouldn't leave with my car.
Oh no, no, we ain't leaving that in the car.
Yeah, they towed the truck, my car, for me to like this parking area that I could get it the next morning because I couldn't drive it because it sat on its side too long, like oil everywhere.
All the fluids are
yes, exactly. So I was like, I can't drive it. So I've got to get picked up by this tow truck, squeeze in. But I was like, dude, we got to find somewhere to put all my gear. And so they let me put it on the back of the truck. And so then I had to make the call that I really didn't want to make, but I knew I had to make. I don't know where you were, but probably like you were out of town or something. Yeah. And so I had to call my wife and say, look, I was literally sitting at a Pizza Hut with my bucket of fly gear in my waders and boots on the side of a curb, just sitting there, right?
Like a homeless fly fishing bum.
Because at this point, the tow truck dude said, "Sayonara." Yeah,
deuces, fellas.
They were out. They were like, "Where do you want to just leave me here, boys?"
This guy can't catch trout, but he can get that personal pan.
Yeah. Right. So I'm in my waders, in my boots, sitting on the side of a curb, and I was like, "Laura, you're gonna have to come get me. Like, you don't have to be in a hurry, but at some point, you're gonna have to come get me."
They shutting down the line at the Pizza Hut. I mean, I'm going to need you to come get me.
Funny enough, my dad had me, just to add another layer to the story. When my dad was going through some of his worst cancer part where he couldn't really talk real good, I preached 3 or 4 weeks for him. And I preached this story as a sermon that my wife was my good Samaritan that night because she came and got me. But she came and got me that night. And yet I'm still allowed to go fishing again. Although Caleb does do all the driving now.
Let's rewind here. You had little children.
They were at mom and dad's.
Okay. So she was solo then.
Well, she was with her mother that night.
Okay.
So her and her mother had to interrupt their shopping experience from you're getting there. Brad's starting to pay attention now. And but this is not like around the corner. I'm a good 45 minutes to an hour away from are. Yeah. They had to drop everything they were doing and come get me. When they picked me up, I'll never forget. She was like, "What is that box?" I was like, "That's all my gear. I couldn't leave it in the car." And so I rode home in my waders that night. Still driving that car to this day, but yeah, it was fun. And the funniest part was the people that actually recognized me. I had no cell phone service. I was like waving down cars to get them to call, like, "Hey, just get down to service, call a state trooper, have them come up here and help me out. We'll get it towed or whatever." They were going to our high school football game because it was like a back way to that when they saw me. That's how they eventually found me. But it's a story I still love to tell. It was a funny night. I don't remember the fish from that night, but it's one of those things where I'm very careful now where I park, and Caleb does most of the driving.
Why drive?
And I have to tell safety tip for anyone who fly fishes in no service mountains: leave a pin, drop a pin, tell your loved ones where you are.
That's right. That's a good lesson right there.
That's a good lesson.
In the hard way.
Yeah. I haven't fished there since.
Yeah, you haven't.
Probably wouldn't either, ain't you?
Don't blame me. I was thinking about my campfire story. There's a lot. One of them probably doesn't have anything to do with fly fishing, and it's when we I got to take my lead pastor at our church. He is a big whitewater kayaker. And so he's taken me down the river a few times doing that. And we had a worship pastor at the time. He's since moved on, but
I love the story.
his name was Holden, and Holden loves to tell the story. So, and he probably tells it way better than I do, but it's still my favorite story. Kind of a rite of passage after you get hired at the church is that summer you kind of got to go on a whitewater rafting trip with Heath. So Heath has this little, that's my lead pastor. Heath has this little 2-man inflatable kayak, and we go to the river and we take Holden. And now Holden was he's since lost a ton of weight, but he was probably pushing 400 pounds at this point. And I'm not a small guy either. For your folks that are listening to this podcast, I'm pretty top heavy myself. So we get on this kayak, we start floating down the Pigeon River, right there, North Carolina, Tennessee, right along I-40. It's an awesome little whitewater section. There's like I think mostly class 3 rapids on it. Well, Holden's all excited. He can't wait. Like, he's fired up. And then we get into this raft and we take off. And rapid 1 is this little classy rapid. He flips right out of the thing. And so he flips out. He's coming up. He can't hardly breathe. Like I say, he's a big guy. He can't hardly breathe. Life jacket's having a rough time.
You send him this. You got to send him.
Oh yeah, he and I told this story so many times. So he comes up. He like starts having almost a full-on asthma attack right there on the side of the creek.
You hit that cold. You hit that cold water. It takes your breath away.
Yeah, it'll take your breath away. So he pops up. We get him. We're going on. We go a couple more rapids. He's falling out again. He falls out again. I think he falls out of the boat probably 10, 15 times. You know, most of these going through class 2 and class 3 whitewater. We and every time he falls out, our lead pastor, he just kind of comes in on his other like little playboat kayak, like white, knight in shining armor, grabs Holden and paddles him over to the side. I paddle the boat over to the side. We come up, we go to this big, the biggest rapid on the stream or on the river. It's called Lost Gods, the name of the rapid. We hit this rapid. It's awesome. We hit it right through the meat. We're big guys. We're going fast. It's this little drop. But like there is a spot where if you fall out, like you're going to get caught in that kind of washing machine effect.
Ooh.
And we hit it though perfect. But as soon as we hit it, we're through it. We're done. And right after we're done, a raft comes right behind us and clips us and it tips us. Well, I jump out of the water and I'm screaming with delight. Like, I'm like, oh, that was awesome. That was incredible. And Holden jumps out of the raft and he's kind of screaming obscenities and saying, what are you yelling for? We almost died. Like, he's freaking out. And so we're like, so poor guy, he goes through the whole thing. We get to another rapid that's like 2 rapids kind of back to back. And I look at him and I'm like, hey, dude, do you just want to walk around this one? He's like, yep, I sure do. That's what I want to do. I'm walking. So we send him to walk around. He's carrying this oar. He kind of has to go back into the woods a little bit to get around just because of the way the bank is. So he disappears. I go through the rapids. I pull off in this little eddy. I'm waiting on him. I'm waiting. I'm like, dude, what the heck has happened? Well, about 10 minutes later, he emerges from the woods and he looked like he'd been in a battle. His shorts that he's worn are ripped from his crotch to his knee. He's got blood pouring down out of his kneecaps. And he comes out and he takes his little oar and he just goes, and I'm like, dude, are you okay? He's like, bro, you're not gonna believe it. I got bit by a snake.
What?
He had been climbing through the woods, put his hand down. He falls like on these sharp rocks on the side of the river. He falls. So he's bloodied up, rips all his clothes, and puts his hand down to catch himself. And as he puts his hand down, he puts it right on top of a black snake. And it just latches onto it.
Oh,
rips it off, throws it down. Needless to say, we get down. But one of the funniest parts of this, and hopefully this is clean enough for your episode, I'm sure it'll be fine. But we get done. He is done. Like, he never wants to do this again. Like, he's like, what have y'all done?
Never going outside
like,
again.
I don't ever want to be like, near water again. We get done. We pull up. They're running the shuttle. He and I are just hanging out. And about that time, this lady, she's probably in her 70s. And she gets out of the river. She looks at Holden. Holden's bloody, like shorts all ripped to pieces. She looks at him and goes, "Did you fall out today?" He said, "She's been wrapped in." He goes, "Yes, ma'am." And she proceeds to tell us how she had fallen out today, and she had gotten this bruise on the cheek of her rear end, and proceeds to show us her huge bruise on her backside, like right there on the side of the river. And like Holden was just like, yep, me too. And so that's just a story we tell over and over again.
Bruce, I got a crack in mine.
Yeah, we had all kinds of stuff. I just felt so bad for that poor guy. We had a blast though. We love to tell that story because it just makes us laugh. He can tell it is so much more fun.
That was perfect for our show, considering none of those stories involve big fish. That'll tell you
Yeah,
all you need to know about our podcast.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, those are good.
For tips on how to catch.
We have a lot of fun stories together, though. One of my favorite stories with Joshua is the night that he decides that we can go find this new water in our boat. And we take off down the river, and I'm like, dude, we're never going to make it out in time.
We had my son with us.
No, we'll make it. He was 10 at the time.
Yeah, we had my son with us.
He's like, no, we'll be fine. I'm like, dude, we're never going to make it before dark.
A little longer float than I thought.
We rode about a mile in the dark.
A mile is a bit of a stretch.
Half mile in the pitch black dark, like rapids.
And
once first time we'd ever been on this river. Like we knew we were pretty safe, but still we rode it out in the dark.
And
that was a fun one.
And our good buddy that we talked about earlier, Mr. Ray was up on the bank saying, "Cut that kind of close, didn't you, boys?"
That's a good time too.
Oh my gosh.
We could do this all night though. We could tell stories forever.
That's good.
So when you these are all fun and everything, and then gosh, you're right, man. We could tell these all night. One of the things that we like to do is like think about these things and like reflect a little bit and like think of, okay, this happened, but okay, what else was happening? You know, is there are there stories, or is there anything, you know, I guess, how has the outdoors and all these experiences helped to grow yourself deeper in your faith? You know, how has God taught you something through the outdoors?
Well, for me, being in ministry, and just the taxing part of it, and the part that seems to never slow down. Matter of fact, I just got done reading a great book by John Eldridge on called "Get Your Life Back." Phenomenal book. You talked about somebody we'd love to have on the podcast. That's a guy.
There's a white whale.
There's a white whale for us.
Yeah, he's on my list as well.
Yeah, but he talks about what beauty does to our souls, and I got to experience that in so many ways. That's the book right there. Just finished it and then passed it on to somebody else to read. But that's what being out does that for me. I can remember a really exact moment in fall of 2020 when the world was just going nuts, and we were in ministry having to make all these decisions about what do we do, and everybody was mad at you. You know,
there's no right decision.
There was no right decision to make, and every decision you made some people mad, or you made some people happy, and then you'd make a different decision, and a different group was mad at you. And
that's right.
It was really difficult. That whole season was just tough, and then in the midst of all that too, we had some family stuff going on. Our boys, both my sons, have had medical issues from the time they were born that we've kind of had to work through. Then my wife even had a bit of a mental health kind of trauma back in around the same time. But I can remember going out that fall of 2020, and I actually went fishing by myself, which I don't recommend and I don't do often, especially around here, because you just get to places that you get lost real easy. But I went up in the fall, leaves were changing color. It was gorgeous around here. It was nobody else out. I went to one of my favorite little creeks that's 10 minutes from my house. And I had started tying flies real seriously. And I went out that day. I think I caught 2 fish. I caught one of the first brook trout I've ever caught on a fly that I had tied.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And like I can still see the visual in my head of that trout coming out from behind a creek just because of the way I could see it. And I can remember just driving back from the creek that day, and I stopped my truck alongside the road because it was just beautiful. Sun was setting behind the mountains. Colors were just incredible. The leaves around that time. And that was the first time in about 2 years I'd actually paused and stopped and had time to actually think about anything, to process all the whole craziness of that season, to actually think about, it's not what being outdoors causes me to do, and what fly fishing, the reason I love it so much, because it's so immersive. It actually makes me slow down. Like I have to slow down. I have to slow my thoughts down. And it's actually in those moments that I think God speaks to me the most. It's actually in those moments that I can actually be quiet enough to hear what it is.
The whole be still and know that I am God.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, fly fishing and this podcast has kind of, I don't know if reassured is the right word. It might be that, and I think I've heard you guys say this, but we're created to be with other people. We're not created to be by ourselves. God created us as like we communicate. That's what humans do. And I have the opportunity to fish with Caleb a lot. There's also a group of I hate calling them old, so I usually call them experienced gentlemen. They really helped me find places in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and the truck rides with those guys, and just taking in knowledge and listening, which is not something I do a lot because I like to talk, but those are special moments to me. And through this podcast and through this community, and like Brad said, I don't like to call it, really, that's the blessing of what we've done, is to be reassured that as men of faith, I don't take those relationships for granted. I know it sounds cliche, and I'm not trying to like say this is just something it's just a gift I have that I think God's given me, that I really try to invest in people. And through this and doing that, and Caleb and me doing this with other folks, it's really just been a big thing for my faith, that, hey, what you're doing through this is good. And it's right. You're meeting people, and when these young dads message you or whatever, like, you're being able to just shine a light. And it's like you said, Brad, am I reading the Roman road to everybody who messages us on Instagram? No. But am I letting them know that, we care about them and their young child they're about to have, or if there's everything we can do for them, just to be encouraging? And then those ripples will make an effect later on. And that's been real powerful. Yeah. It's been good for me. It's what I needed kind of through the season post COVID. Just kind of where I was in my life, as we told earlier, the older dad, in that season of my life, that I needed that, to where, I just love people, man. And anytime I can fish with folks, like you guys come up and I can fish, it's awesome for me just to see how fishing makes us all pause, focus on something else. But man, those conversations you get on the water are special conversations. And I've been blessed to be able to do it with my brother more than anybody, but other people that we get to take out, and my dad and so on. And it's been special to me. And that's just kind of reassured, like you said, faith, that what we're doing is right. And that God's blessed us through that.
That's good.
Man, I love that. I think Brad, early on and us creating this thing, we created it in the midst of the pandemic. And one of the things Brad said was, man, people just need good. They need something good in the world, and we want to be part of that. We want to be part of putting something else good in the world. And I think you guys are doing that, man. And I applaud you. Y'all have a good thing going, and we're a podcast, and you guys are a podcast, and there's no room for competition here. It's all, we're all pointing towards the same thing, and we're all hoping that we bring something unique to the table. So thank you guys so much.
I love it, Brian, when I see a follower of ours on Instagram, like somebody posts on Instagram I'm following, and they're wearing one of your hats or they're resharing one of your episodes. And I know that, they're listening to your show and they're also following us. And
yeah, how cool is
man,
that?
That's so cool. Who was it?
I know. I said, how cool is that?
Oh yeah, it's so awesome. And I'm just like you, just building this community of, as Brad says, like-minded people that just need something good. And for men, and dads, there's just, there's this. That was the other thing we started the show. There's not a show out there that there's tons of shows talk about fly fishing, but there's really not one that talks about trying to be a good father and fly fishing. And we fall short on that. Sometimes on episodes we don't do enough father because we get so into a fishing story. As my wife calls it, that episode was too fish heavy for me to listen to because I don't want to know about all this fish stuff. But we try to circle back. And but man, I couldn't not say enough about you. I wanted to make sure that, I know we're getting close to ending this, but you guys do such a great job with your show, and it's so professionally done and so well done. And your listeners know that. They're listening to this. And I mean, just listening to your show has been really inspirational for us as we started our show. Hearing some of the episodes you do, I mean, obviously we talk about Wade, but we met Wade through you guys.
Yep.
And I know he's been a big influence in all of our lives sitting here.
Yeah.
And hearing you, some of the essays you write and just how they speak awesome to me. And so it's also as a podcast fan who just loves listening to shows, your show is always a nice thing for me to listen to and know I'm going to be encouraged by it. So I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. That's so kind to say that. One thing we like to do when we end our shows is ask, what's your next adventure? So that can either be something with the podcast, it could be something with your family, it could be something on a fly fishing trip. And it's your question to answer.
You know me, I'm like, I don't even know what it is yet.
He's got 20 in his pocket.
You're going to take it on the fly.
Ready to go after. I'm really excited about the retreat. Yeah. I'm really excited to see what that looks like.
That's great.
That's an adventure that's kind of planned. Like we know what's going to happen.
Yep.
But I'm excited to see just as far as fishing goes, I'm excited to catch, hopefully this spring, maybe this summer, and in the fall. I need to cast some 8 and 9 weight rods after some fish in saltwater, and I haven't done that, and I am itching to get that done. And I'm sure Brad can tell me all about it. But I know
if only we knew a guy with a boat.
Yeah, I know, right? But I'm itching to get that done, and that is a must have happen this year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, the retreat is something I'm definitely looking forward to. It's the next kind of really big adventure coming up for that. Before that, even though we've got a family camping trip coming up in April that I'm really excited about.
Nice.
We get to do it's the second one we've done, but it's going to be an annual thing. We've got some families in our church that we've all got kids around the same age, and hopefully they don't kick us out of the campground because our kids will be making a bunch of racket. But that's a trip I'm excited about. I'll get to do some fishing on that trip as well. But anytime I can get my boys outside, away from all the noise and all the craziness, is a good time. And the fact that my wife is enjoying it now too is a huge bonus. So,
man, love that.
Yeah,
that's great. Guys, where can our listeners connect with you the best?
Best place is check out our website, dazzleandfly.com. You can see all the past episodes. You can sign up for our email list there. We send out information about upcoming events. That's a good home base. But then to follow along with kind of what's happening every day or weekly, probably Instagram. And then you can find us at Dads on the Fly and shoot us a message, because Joshua will respond. And because
he's hanging out behind that Dads on the Fly.
I don't do that. I mean, shoot a message to Dads on the Fly, and Joshua will message you back, because
I'll tell you all about what's going on, and then Caleb will find out later when I tell him, hey, I met this cool person. I met these cool guys from the Storied Outdoors. You need to go follow.
That's literally
kind of how it happened. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's amazing. Man, well, what a great conversation. We've been looking forward to partnering with you guys and having you guys on the show and just sharing some stories. And we're both after the same thing, and that's, like I said, interjecting some good into a world full of contention.
Yeah.
There are lots of podcasts out there that are, stirring the pot, if you will, on whatever topic it is, and they're trying to, do their thing and gain their listeners. But I think we're aligned in that we're trying to interject some encouragement and some good into the world and talk about some things that we love to talk about, but ask some questions and learn from people. And so we hope these conversations encourage people, whether it's ours or yours or both, and people to be encouraged, be uplifted, to be challenged, to take time to reflect on their stories, write their stories, share adventures in the place that we love to call the Storied Outdoors.